Mr. Chair, we're just waiting. Oh, Mr. Hardy is joining us. We have everyone now, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tina. We'll now start meeting number 3 of our Fisheries and Oceans Committee. Before I get into the normal rant that I give at the beginning, I'm going to ask for the committee to agree that we all know how to use Zoom now. We know how to use the hand raise. So I'd like to skip over the big speech that I normally read and just highlight the fact that direct everything, all comments through the chair, and we'll get everybody in order. So as we left off on Tuesday, we had a list of people who had raised their hand to introduce motions. So we'll continue on with that list. So the first one up today, starting off, will be Mr. Cormier.
Bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez tous bien.
Good morning all, I hope you're all well.
To do something important, Madame Debienne asked if she could have a short something to say before we get into the actual continuing on with the motions.
Yeah, and I had a point of order also at the beginning, but we can certainly let Ms. Debian go ahead. So, and
Okay.
It's probably the same thing, but anyway, go ahead, Ms. Debian.
And I also have a point of order as well.
Okay, Madame Debian.
Je pense pas. Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'était l'anniversaire de Monsieur Cormier hier, alors je voulais souligner avec un petit bout de chanson.
Thank you. It was Mr. Cormier's birthday yesterday.
Enlacé de ma voix, te dire pour vrai ce que tout le monde pense en secret. Le bonheur a besoin de toi. Le bonheur a besoin de toi. Bonne fête, Serge.
Happy birthday, Serge. Thank you, Caroline. I know that Caroline is an excellent singer. No, it's not the same point of order. Merci.
So, Mr. Chair, just a point of order at the beginning, before I talk about my motion. Je sais que je m'exprime en anglais.
I know that I speak English. You've seen it since I'm a member of the committee, but Mr. Chair, it's a little difficult for me sometimes to follow the debate. I need the interpretation. So does Ms. Desbiens, and I know the Anglophones need the interpretation also. And last meeting, during the votes, it was difficult for me, and I'm sure it was the same for Madame Desbiens, to follow all of the motions, sub-amendments. Interpreters do an extraordinary work to interpret, but sometimes when they interpret from English to French, there's 15 to 20 second lag.
Interrupt for 1 second. I'm hearing both voices on at the same time. I'm hearing Serge and the interpreter, and I can't make out either.
Okay, have you got translation on English, Mr. McLeod?
Yes, I do.
Okay, it was strange to hear both because.
Are you guys hearing it, or am I the only one hearing both?
You're actually on twice. Your name is showing up on the screen twice, one with your picture and the other with the sound. When you speak, it's not your picture that lights up as yellow, it's the other sound. So you're actually on twice somehow. So that's maybe why you're hearing it French and English.
That means I have 2 votes there at the committee.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm on twice.
We'll see how you make out with the 2 vote bit, but that might be why you're hearing it twice.
Chair, there was an overlap from mine as well. A distinctive Serge was on and the interpreter.
Okay, I don't know. Tina, can we get that checked out? Why they would hear both?
Yeah.
The interpreter was on the wrong channel. I'm sorry about that.
To get a phone call.
Is that better now, Serge, or anyone listening? Serge, if you continue, if it's not doing what it's supposed to do, I'll
okay.
Stop again.
Alors, ce que je disais, c'était
So what I was saying that when it's time to vote on the motions, what I was saying is that difficult, even if I can speak English, I do use the interpretation to understand what's going on. I know Ms. Desbiens does the same. So maybe before the votes for the Anglos and for our Anglo colleagues, imagine if I present a motion in French, there's a lag with the interpretation. Interpreters do an excellent work, but Madam Clerk or Mr. Chair, could you ask if everybody heard the motion and the sub-amendments just before the vote? Because sometimes when the vote is called, the interpreter is still speaking, and it's a little confusing for us.
and I think we can all benefit from it.
Okay. Thank you for that, Serge. And I will try to remember to ask for just a short delay before we actually get into any vote. And Tina has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After speaking with the ambassadors here in the room, at the bottom of your screen, and this may be more specifically for Mr. McLeod, but it can apply to everyone else, where you see the option at the bottom of the screen, interpretation, it would be important to select mute original audio. If you select to mute the original audio, that will cut out the additional sound.
So,
okay. So, Serge, if that's your point of order, before you get to your actual motion and the list that we had developed, Mr. Perkins has a point of order as well.
okay, I'll wait for.
Yes, I just want to just give notice that depending on how today will go, because today was originally scheduled to be a meeting to actually sort through with the work plan and figure out what the priorities and timing would be. I have a motion with that regard before the end of the meeting if we don't get to that part.
Okay, well, it is my intention, if the committee is in favor, that if we get through a number of these motions at the last half hour, we dedicate it to some scheduling, because if not, we're going to run into a problem when we start our first meeting back when the House opens. We'd like to know what we're doing for the first couple of studies so we can line up witnesses and send out headphones if need be, or any equipment they need to appear before the committee if they're not doing it in person. So that was my intent, to actually try and get that ironed out in that fashion. I also want to mention, of course, delighted to see Mr. McLeod here today, a member from Northwest Territories, subbing in on the committee. I think this is probably first time for him to be on Fisheries Committee. He sits close to me in the House, and I find at times he has a wealth of knowledge and other times he don't. So hopefully this is a time when he has a wealth of knowledge to offer to the rest of the members of the committee. So welcome, Michael. And now, Serge, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're back with my motion, right, that I presented last Tuesday. So I think you had a chance to see the motion. I explained it a little bit. It's basically a study that I want to do that I actually was at up the last Parliament with all the members of this committee to study the white whales measure that was put in place by our government since 2017 to protect the right whales that are more and more present in the Gulf of St. Laurent here, and that has an impact also on the fishing industry, the community, the fish plant workers. And we had to deal with that. Like the measure that were put in place, in my opinion, was good measure. It was to do a lot of things. Yes, to protect the whale, but to protect our markets also. Market whether it's in the United States, and how difficult that is sometimes. So it's a study that I want to do to make sure that we're on the proper track. That what was done so far with this measure strike a good balance also. With protecting the whale, but also protecting the industry that we have and the community all around it. And this is not only affecting me in my area here. It touched like some part of Nova Scotia, of PEI, of Quebec also. And we were lucky in the last 2 years. There was almost zero debt in relation to fishing gears and entanglement of whale. But there were some strike with big boats, that travel our goods like from one place to another. So I want to look at those measures. Is there a way to improve them? Is there something else that the government can do, but also all the fishermen association? And just to let you know, unbelievable word. Like, can you imagine that we have some testing done right now with some traps without ropes? They press on a button, the trap goes up. There's no rope in the water, like things like that. So, but sometimes it's difficult for fishermen to fish with those gears. So, and there's all sorts of other measure that was put in place. So I want to study that. I want to see what we can do more. This is basically what my motion is, and it's something that I think it will be impossible to do this spring, like right now. Like the fishing season is starting pretty soon, as you know. But in the fall, when you come back, I think it will be the time to do that. Some crab fishing season is over at that time, but it also has an impact on lobster a little bit, and whales can be present other places, right? With the global warming and the ocean that are warming up. So I think it will be a good study to have, and it will benefit everybody on the screen. So I hope that I have your support on that. So if you have any question, I'm open to answer some of them.
Great. Thank you, Serge, for that. Mr. Perkins, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Cormier and Mr. Chair, thank you. Fully support what you're proposing here. No questions, and I think it's a very valuable study for the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burkin.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So can I see a consensus for the motion to go ahead as presented by Mr. Cormier? Any dissenting?
Merci.
Passed.
Thank you.
All right, so next up is Mr. Perkins.
We gave notice of motion on December 14th that the following reports of this committee in the second session of the 43rd Parliament be adopted as reports in this session. Report 1, striped bass in the southern Gulf of St. Lawrence and Miramichi River, striking a delicate balance. And Report 4, implementation of the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet Treaty right to fish in pursuit of a moderate livelihood, and that the chair present these reports to the House.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I see Mr. Morrissey has his hand up.
Mr. Chair, before we're probably heading into votes, but did we get a clear interpretation or ruling on the eligibility to participate in the committee on voting without being live? It's important. I don't want to deny Mr. Zimmer's role, but did we get a clarification on that?
Yes, if Mr. Zimmer is required to speak, or if there's a vote, he would have to have his camera turned on.
Okay.
And I believe that's what the clerk kind of indicated to him, that while there's discussion on the go, of course, he can leave it off. But like I say, if he wants to speak or vote, the camera has to be on. So I hope that settles that issue.
We hope it works. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Mr. Hardy, you have your hand up. Are you speaking to the motion of Mr. Perkins?
Yes, I am. I'm just wondering if the clerk can give us advice as to whether we can do, gang them all up and handle it in one motion, or if we need a separate motion for each study that needs to be brought back.
Tina?
So, Mr. Chair, if this is regarding the motion of Mr. Perkins that's just been moved, I would recommend that they can be done together in one motion. However, it is recommended that they are separated as two separate motions, because they do refer to two separate studies, and it would be clearer in this way.
Okay. If we do separate them, we'd obviously have to do a separate vote on each one?
A separate vote. I'm not sure I understand the question. So the current motion that's before the committee is as it's been read into the record with both together. I'm sorry, could I speak with you for just one moment?
Yeah, or Tina, to make it easier, I can ask Mr. Perkins if he'll withdraw the motion as was read and then do report 1 first and then report 4.
Well, I'm always in the hands of the committee, but I think because we have a number of motions to go through from still, and I think there are some others to be tabled that we don't have notice of motion of. I think it's just easier if we put the 2 because they're both just being tabled in the House together. Simplifies it that way because I have another motion, which is one, as you know, that we gave notice of a motion on where we'd like a report as opposed to being tabled in the House. So I think it's easier to put these 2 on the House procedure. And since the clerk said it's in order, I would prefer that if that's possible.
Okay, Tina, do you still need to speak to me?
Yes, as long as the committee agrees to adopt it as it's been proposed, that's fine. That's fine as well.
Okay, Mr. Hardy, you have your hand up.
I do indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the motion, it says at the end, the chair present the report to the House. Is it Mr. Perkins' intention to ask the government for a response? If so, that should be included in this motion.
Not intending to ask it in this way. These are just being tabled in the House. So the answer is no.
So you don't want a report or a response back from the government?
I'll leave that to House leaders to decide once the report's tabled.
That gets us into, the potential for concurrence motions and other things that tend to chew up time in the House. Perhaps it would be better just looking ahead and all of the things that need to be dealt with in the House itself, that this be amended then to request that the government provide a response to the studies.
Well, I'm not open to amendment, but obviously others can propose it.
I would so propose, Mr. Chair. So to amend this motion that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee request that the government table a comprehensive response to these reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardy. And we've heard the amendment by Mr. Hardy. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none or no hands raised. I'll ask for a show of thumbs up for yay to the amendment, and then I'll ask for thumbs down. So thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. Tina, are you counting the thumbs up?
Just a reminder, Mr. Chair, that pursuant to the House Order of November 25, all votes in committee must be decided on unanimously or carried on division or by recorded vote.
Okay. Would you do a recorded vote, please?
On the amendment of Mr. Hardy, Monsieur Cormier?
Yes.
Monsieur Cormier?
Oh, oui, désolé, oui, j'étais sur mute, oui.
Mr. McLeod? Mr. McLeod, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's a yes. Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway?
Wait.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Against.
Mr. Perkins?
Against.
Mr. Small?
Against.
Mr. Zimmer?
Against. Against.
Thank you. Madame Desbiens? Pour? Okay.
Pour.
Okay. And Ms. Barron?
I guess I'll go with yes. I had some further clarification, to be honest, but
So is that a yes? I'm sorry.
yes, sure.
Thank you. Yeas pour 7, nays contre 4, 4.
Okay, so the amendment, proposed amendment is passed. We'll now go back to the discussion on the main motion as amended. No further discussion. Can I say passed on division or any dissension? I'm seeing thumbs up on all sides. Okay, passed on division. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Now, Madame Desbiens.
Alors, Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, I didn't think my turn was coming up so quickly. I thought I was further down the line, but I'm happy to have the floor. So, pursuant to Standing Order 108, that the committee undertake a study on foreign investment and the concentration of businesses and fishing licenses, and that we that the committee also accepts. The interpreter apologizes. She doesn't have the text. That the committee hold a minimum of 5 meetings, and that it makes its recommendations to the House. I hope I didn't read too quickly.
On the translation, but have the members received text of that motion? Tina has her hand up, saying yes. So I'm just confirming.
Oui, je pense que Madame.
I believe the clerk did receive it and send it to everyone.
Has seen the text of the motion and have heard the motion as presented. Mr. Cormier.
Madame Desbiens, je lis votre.
Madame Desbiens, I'm reading your motion quickly. We're talking about foreign investment. We had talked about large foreign companies that are coming to Canada with investments to purchase our processing plants, and they would go on docks and offer very low prices to fishermen, and after 2 or 3 years they would bring the prices so low that fishermen were stuck with big companies that had monopolies in a region, and then it was difficult to maintain things that have been acquired in coastal regions. So this is about foreign investment that is hindering the business. That's exactly correct, Mr. Cormier. We would like to proceed with a study instead of making assumptions. The study would shed some light on the issue. From all sides, we're hearing concerns about this issue, so this motion has become a priority. I'm hoping that it will be adopted unanimously because there is an imminent danger of losing quotas. Fisher owners of these quotas in particular what we're concerned with. And I think that on this front, we agree with you, and I hope that the committee will agree as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Chair, could we have a brief recess, a suspension? This motion just came in shortly. It's a good motion, but I just want to make sure I fully understand where it is going. So if we could have a few moments suspension so we could discuss this.
Okay, we'll suspend for a couple of minutes and get back to it at that time. The motion. If everybody could turn their cameras back on for a show of everybody okay to vote with a thumbs up, yay or nay, or thumbs down. I see all thumbs up. So approved on division. All right, thank you, Madame Debienne. Now, Madame Barron, you're next on the list, even though you weren't here the other day, but Mr. Batrack had put his hand up to put one forward, but it just didn't get to him in time. So you get to do it yourself.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. And that answers my questions. My question around whether it was put forward in the previous meeting. So that's great. The motion that we are putting forward has been resent. Just to clarify, has everybody received a chair? Have you received a written copy?
If it's the one on your note that you put forward for your notice of motion?
Yes, so there's a slight change
Okay.
that I'm told was resent in written form, and I want to confirm that you have received that.
Yeah, Tina's given me a thumbs up. Everybody has received it.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
So the motion that I am bringing forward, just one second. I apologize, I'm using one screen, and sometimes that makes things a little less efficient. So I'm just going to find it here, one second. Here it is, thank you. That pursuant to Standing Order 108 2, the committee undertake a study of marine cargo container spills on Canada's marine environment with regard to 1, the environmental impacts of cargo container spills, 2, improving response times and efficacy to cargo spills, 3, addressing jurisdictional gaps to improve collaboration with volunteer, charitable organizations, provincial and territorial agencies, municipalities, and Indigenous communities during spill responses. We are now on to number 4, improving polluter responsibility and financial accountability, that no fewer than 4 meetings be allocated for this study, and that following the study, the committee present a report to the House. And to clarify, Chair, can I provide the rationale now?
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. So this motion, I'm happy to bring forward. As many of you know, there was a recent cargo spill off the west coast of Canada, the Zim Kingston. Unfortunately, the spill in October recently resulted in 109 containers falling into our waters, and 105 of them, I should confirm that number, 105 of them have sunk, and we saw debris and containers washing up onto our shores. Now, this is not an isolated incident. We had another spill in 2016. For years after, we saw styrofoam items that should not be in our waters washing up on our shores. And so the reason for bringing this motion forward is that we are seeing that approximately 3,000 containers have fallen in the Pacific waters between September and December of last year. And this is going to continue to increase, unfortunately, with increased transportation happening in our waters, as we inevitably see the impacts of our climatic events within our oceans, and with climate change, we're inevitably going to see storms like the one that caused the Zim Kingston spill. We also heard from from the New Channel Tribal Council President Judith Sayers, who wrote to the Transport Minister Omar Al-Gabra saying that the ongoing incident involving the container ship Zim Kingston has brought to light numerous shortcomings in the overall marine emergency response capacity for the west coast of Vancouver Island. And this motion is attempting to do just that, for us to understand how we can better provide a response to these spills and to protect our coasts and our waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. I see a couple of people have their hands up for comments. Mr. Callaway.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and to MP Barron, thank you for this study. It's clearly defined, and you can actually, point by point by point. I'm appreciative of the context, the verbal context, but your study really highlights it quite well, and I'm actually very interested in this study as well. So I just wanted to say, with gratitude, thank you for putting it forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Callaway. Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, I would again ask for the clerk's advice just on the scope of this particular study, because a lot of the regulations, et cetera, with respect to the safety of cargo handling, et cetera, would fall into Transport Canada, whereas of course the response is clearly an issue that would come to this committee in terms of the activities of the Canadian Coast Guard and the liaison with community groups up and down the coast. So it would be a shame to see a worthy study like this ruled out of order by the speaker if we've strayed too far into somebody else's mandate. Again, a reading or opinion by the clerk might be useful at this point.
Okay. Tina?
I can confirm, yes. The committee can study for sure, but when we present reports and the speaker finds that we're reporting on a subject that goes outside the mandate of the committee, yes, it would be indeed could be ruled out of order. We rely on our analysts, and I see Ty and Michael with us today. They can certainly give some guidance as to the responsibilities of the department and the mandate.
I don't know if Michael or Ty has any comment. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the scope or mandate of the committee, that's not my role to decide. That is the committee to decide on it as a vote. However, there is the Oceans Protection Plan, which is run by Out of Transport Canada. However, DFO and the Canadian Coast Guard obviously have a role to play in response to marine cargo incidents, just as the previous member explained. So that's as far as I could guide the committee on that.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So I think it touches on several departments, but it certainly has some responsibility with the Minister of Fisheries, I think, as well. When we look at the Coast Guard falls under that, and they handle a lot of the responses. So I think if it were up to me, I'd say yes, do the study, and if we report in the House and the Speaker deems it not admissible from our committee, maybe we can argue the other way if that happens. But as Mr. Callaway and Mr. Hardy indicated, it seems to be a good study to do. So any other comments? Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, perhaps what we could think of doing is do the study as scoped, and then when it's time to go through the report, try and identify areas where we may be stepping over a boundary and deal with it through edits to the report or whatever, or referral to Transport Committee if necessary. But I mean, I agree with everybody else. This is a worthy study and certainly worth looking into. And I would hate to see it, just basically tossed out as being out of order. So we can maybe, do some patches, fix, hacks, whatever is required at the end of the process to make sure that everything works.
That's where we'll lean heavy on Michael and Ty, I think, down the road. So, and I don't see any other thumbs up other than Ms. Barron herself.
Great, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, I appreciate the comments and also the thoroughness of discussing how this will look moving forward. I'm open to us looking at how that might be presented in the end, but I think as long as the work is being done, the reality is there's overlap between many of the committees, but I do think the scope of what we're looking for through this motion very much does fall within this committee, and I would love to see us dig into this work and get things moving forward around it.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Seeing no other thumbs up, or no more hands up rather for discussion, can I ask for the vote for those in favor to give a thumbs up? I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Any thumbs down? Okay, passed unanimously. Right, now that gets us to the end of our first list. So I'm going to ask people to use the hands up function again to move on with further motions. I only see one up so far. Mr. Perkins.
I actually have two, but I don't know, Chair. I sent Jamie an email, but I'm not sure how you want to handle it. I can just do one and then you can decide what to do next.
Yep, go ahead. Yep, one at a time.
We gave notice of motion, although I'm making a slight amendment on December 14th that the following report of this committee in the second session of the 43rd Parliament be adopted as a report in this session, report 2, aquatic invasive species a national priority, and that the chair present the report to the House.
Okay, we've heard the terms of the motion. Any discussion? Mr. Hardy.
Yes, I would propose the same amendment that I proposed on the last of Mr. Perkins' motions, that a comprehensive response from the government be requested. So that it would read that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to this report. That's an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Madame Debienne, you have your hand up. Is that to talk to the amendment? Okay, hand is down now.
Non, excusez-moi, Monsieur le Président, je voulais.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I just want to introduce another motion.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak in favor of the motion itself. So if this is to the amendment.
To the amendment.
Okay, I'll just pause until that occurs. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up to the proposed amendment. Ms. Barron.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your patience as I navigate these waters. If somebody could please clarify, I like that I use that with this committee being FOPO, but can somebody please clarify how this amendment would result in a differed outcome in the end for this motion? I'm just trying to understand the differences that would result from this amendment.
Okay, I'll try to do my best with it, and if I do it somewhat haphazardly, if the clerk wants to correct me on any, I think it's due to the fact that we can do any study we want if it relates to the work of the committee. And a lot of times when reports are presented in the House, it is more often than not that you're asking for the government to actually respond to this actual report that's being reported in the House. There are times, of course, that the committee and the members may decide not to require a response. They just wanted to hear witnesses and look at a particular study reported in the House, and that's the end of it. But for the most part, it's very common to ask for the government to an official response back from the government on a particular study. Okay. Not seeing Mr. Hardy, you got your hand up.
Yes, and actually, I'll profess not to be right up to speed on all of the intricacies of this, but I understand that leaving out the proposed amendment would create a situation where motions could be then brought forward to the House of Commons that would involve debate and the use of basically House of Commons time, which we can avoid by simply asking for this amendment, asking for the government to table a response. Again, that's as deeply as I can go into the technicalities of this, but perhaps somebody has a bit more clarification on it.
Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, I think Mr. Hardy is right. The simple difference is with this amendment, the government tables a written response. With it as I'm proposed, there is the option for this report to be debated in the House. And that's what we're allowing with my motion to give the leadership of the parties the option to do. So it is a substantive change in the approach in terms of the amendment. It significantly changes the original motion. And it's something I would oppose.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Not seeing any other hands up on the proposed amendment by Mr. Hardy. So I think it might be easier on this one to ask Tina to do a recorded division, where I know there's going to be some yays and nays. So Tina, when you're ready, please. And I'd like to remind, before you start, we'll take a short little pause to make sure Mr. Cormier and Madame Debienne is fully aware of what's been translated. for them.
Thank you. Monsieur
So,
Cormier.
when you're ready.
Madame Desbiens, vous êtes prêt?
Mhm.
The amendment of Mr. Hardy. Monsieur Cormier.
Oui.
Mr. Hanley. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Hanley.
Oh, Mr. McLeod.
Mr. McLeod, I'm sorry. I've run through all of my amended lists. Mr. Hanley, Mr. McLeod, please.
Michael,
Are you, Mr. McLeod, can
are you
hear me?
voting?
Just to clarify, Chair, Mr. McLeod has a hearing problem, so it's important that that be communicated with.
Well, I guess it's no good in me singing out from here in Newfoundland. He definitely won't hear me.
Thumbs up or thumbs down for him,
Thumbs
maybe?
up. Tom, we'll come back to Mr. McLeod.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe just motion verbally, and then he might pick up on it. Is it up or down with your thumb? That might work.
Yeah, but Michael, either thumbs up or thumbs down. Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Got him. Thanks,
Sorry,
Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having either a problem with my hearing aid or the headset. I'm really struggling to stay patched in. Apologize.
No problem, Michael. We know you're getting up there in years. You take care. Tina, continue on, please.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
That's my excuse, Mr. Chair. I'd say yes.
Mr. Kellaway.
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mr. Arnold.
Opposed.
Mr. Perkins.
Against.
Mr. Small.
No.
Mr. Zimmer.
Opposed.
Madame Desbiens.
Contre.
And Ms. Barron.
I'll go with against.
Thank you. Five yeas, 6 nays.
Okay, so the proposed amendment is defeated. So we'll go back now to the original motion. Any discussion? Not seeing any hands up. Tina, if you could, Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Chair, the only point I'd make is, the previous committee studied this, and so we just denied requesting the government actually table a response and report to the work of the committee. It's rather contradictory.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I won't belabor the point, but I'm with MP Morrissey on this. To not have a response from government is, to me, akin.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we debating a vote that just happened?
Agreed.
We're discussing the main motion, actually.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
After the amendment, we
on a
decided.
Traduction.
Yes, Madame Desbiens. No translation. Tina, could you check on that, please?
We can hear the French. We can hear
Okay,
the
I'm getting it.
interpretation.
Merci infiniment.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Kellaway, to finish up.
No, I'll be very quick. It's exceptionally odd for me to not have a government response to a study. It is absolutely.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I'll conclude.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Zimmer.
I know they may not have liked the last vote, but that previous motion had been defeated, as my colleague, Mr. Perkins, had just said, and they're still speaking to it. So I just hope we can speak to the main motion.
And I believe that's what I asked to be spoken to. And I think if you're speaking to, as Mr. Kellaway mentioned, they're talking about the main motion not requiring a response from the government. So that does, I think, in my preview, considered discussing the motion itself. But if there's no further discussion, we'll go to a vote on the main motion as presented by Mr. Perkins.
Chair, point of order, please. Just to make sure, trying to follow here. The last motion was defeated,
the proposal of the amendment was defeated.
Okay, perfect.
So Tina, when you're ready, if you could do a recorded vote, please.
Thank you. On motion of Mr. Hardy, Monsieur Cormier.
Yes.
Excuse me. Sorry. Point of order.
Yeah.
We've already voted on Mr. Hardy's motion, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry.
This is on the main motion.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins. Motion of Mr. Perkins. Sorry, I correct the record. And Monsieur Cormier, you're voting yay. Is that correct?
Yay.
Thank you.
Of Mr. Perkins, you mean?
Yes, the motion of Mr. Perkins. Monsieur Cormier?
Mr. Cormier?
Mr. Cormier.
Okay, so look, I just want to make sure because it seems to be confusing a little bit here.
Would you
For
like
me.
me to reread the motion?
So the motion, the amendment that Mr. Hardy proposed was defeated. Right? Now
Yes.
we're voting on Mr. Perkins' motion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When you're ready, Tina, please.
Again, I apologize for the confusion. Indeed, motion of Mr. Perkins. Monsieur Cormier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Mr. McLeod. You can give a thumbs up.
Michael, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I can't hear the clerk at all, but it's a thumbs up for me.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
No.
Mr. Kellaway. Oh,
No.
I think you're muted. Mr. Kellaway?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mr. Arnold.
In favor.
Mr. Perkins.
Favor.
Mr. Small.
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer.
In favor.
Madame Desbiens.
Je vote pour.
Ms. Barron.
In favor.
Yeas. Yeas pour. 9. Nays contre 2.
Thank you. Motion as presented by Mr. Perkins passes. Now we'll go to Madame Desbiens.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So pursuant to Standing Order 108 to the committee undertake a study on the small craft harbors program, particularly its findings regarding the divestiture of wharves. That the committee invite the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, experts, government officials, and industry stakeholders, that the committee hold at least 4 meetings to do so, and that the committee present its findings and recommendations in a report to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, that the committee request that the government present a global response to the report. A comprehensive response.
De bien. We've all heard the motion. Discussion, Mr. Cormier.
Madame Desbiens, merci pour votre.
Thank you, Madame Desbiens, for the motion on small craft harbors. But to give a little bit more context, the committee has already studied small craft harbors during the last legislature, but I know that it's important for you. And I think we would agree to study it. I think there are good things to say about small craft harbors, but I just want you to know that the committee has already done such a study, but it might be interesting to see if we can add anything. But I just wanted you to know that the committee did this report in 2018 or 2019. I read the report even if I wasn't a member at the time. Can I answer? Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Yes, I'm quite aware that the government has invested. There was a study that the government responded, but my objective would be to study the result, to see what the situation is now, what else needs to be done given recent unfortunate incidents, and also because we would like the government to go further, but I don't want to present conclusions. I just want to suggest that the committee study the result of the investments and give an update. That's how I see this study.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Hearing none or seeing no hand. Mr. Perkins.
Just want to say that I support this this motion. I do understand that there have been previous reports. There's a great disappointment that the government actually hasn't acted on them from what I can see. So I think it's time to focus once again. I think the last report was 2019, perhaps. Anyway, I support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. So can I see a thumbs up or thumbs down? I see thumbs up from all sides. Any dissension? Passed on division. Now, Mr. Perkins, back to you.
Well, it's not a procedural one, so hopefully it'll have more more support. But I live in fear of the chair commenting on my age or some sort of thing. Anyway, we gave notice of motion. I gave notice of motion December 14th that the committee undertake a study examining systems and requirements pertaining to at-sea safety of commercial harvesters, including Transport Canada regulations related to vessel design, safety requirements, and seaworthiness, and examining the federal commercial training courses and licensing requirements of mariners before going to sea, and upgrading of skills as required, and examining the Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue capabilities and response rates, and that the committee allot no fewer than, I'm going to reduce it if that's okay, Chair, from 8 to 6, so that the committee allot no fewer than 6 two-hour meetings to receive the testimony, that the committee also accept written briefs from individuals or organizations who wish to submit input, and the committee submit its findings with recommendations in a report to the House.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. We've heard the context of the motion. Tina, I don't know if the change from 6 to 8 has to be voted on as an amendment. I'll ask for your clarification on that.
If the committee, nope, it does not. If the committee is good with that,
Okay.
I'll just make the change.
I just wanted to be sure I didn't want to run into trouble down the road. Mr. Zimmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to it. It's particularly important to pursue this study and for the safety of our fishing community. So support it.
Thank you. Seeing no other, Mr. Morrissey.
Well, Mr. Chair, it is very good motion, but then again, I wonder, we've now done 2 motions, one from the block. Is there no interest from those motions in actually having the government bound to report back, prepare a report? If these are extensive, this is a good item to study, Mr. Perkins. We get a lot has changed over the past number of years on this issue. It overlaps with different ministries. And there's a lot of, I'll call backyard modifications occurring within fishing boats, but I'd
be open to amendment if you want to make one. I'm sorry, I probably missed that when I drafted it.
Well, then if it would be appropriate, Chair, because on this one, I feel very strongly that the government should report back to the House so that we have a report, they know what we're doing. So I would make that motion, Mr. Perkins, to your very, very good motion.
Okay, so you're presenting that as an amendment that there be an official government response.
Well, I think that's the only way we can actually get an official response. Am I correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So I would make that amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Madame Debian. Okay.
Non, j'avais un autre commentaire.
No, I had another comment on the original motion, so we can continue with the amendment.
Deal with the amendment first, and then I'll get back to you, Madame Debian. Seeing nothing in the way of hands up to talk on the amendment, can I ask for Mr. Arnold?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just want clarification with the amendment. Is it a response, a government response, or a response to the House? These, I think, are 2 different things. Could you clarify, please?
It would be the government response to the House, the same text that was used before, ensuring that government actually responds to the report. When the committee does this work, I feel strongly, I've sat on it for years. We've seen very good reports in the past where there was no response by the government. So this, it simply clarifies. It would, Mr. Arnold, it would be the similar motion that was earlier adopted, and one was defeated, and now we're back again.
All right. Seeing no other hands up for discussion on the amendment, can we see a show of thumbs up or thumbs down on the proposed amendment by Mr. Morrissey? Okay, I'm seeing on division. Okay, passed on division. Now we'll go to discussion of the main motion as amended. Madame Debian, you had your hand up to talk to the main motion.
Yes, I would like to examine capacity in a form of amendment. It's something that could be done during the study, but we could also discuss it together. I would like to examine the search and rescue capabilities, and I would like to add the official languages component. This is because someone brought my attention to certain incidents where pleasure craft were not able to receive service in French when they were in distress. I don't know how you see this. We can include it in the amendment, or we can bring it back during the study. It's something that I'm open to discussing.
Okay, in the actual motion, I will say that one of the recommendations examining the Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue capabilities and response rates. Now, response rates to me would be the timeliness of the responses, not that they're charging a rate to respond on any particular response, and that's the way I took it. I don't know if that's what you're trying to make sure is included, Madame Desbiens, but the bilingual.
Ouais, peut-être un amendement.
Yes, maybe we can amend it and include a mention of the official languages, so a speed of response in both official languages.
To that, but I think that would sort of be covered in the wording already, which says examining the Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue capabilities, which I would assume we could have witnesses and discuss that issue as part of that, but I'm open either way.
And to that point, Mr. Perkins, Madame Desbiens, are you asking for the response back to the House to be in both official languages? Because I would think that would happen normally. So could you please explain exactly what you're looking for so as we fully understand?
Mais, en fait,
what I'm trying to call your attention to here is that there are situations that were reported to me where pleasure craft were in distress, and when they communicated with the Coast Guard, they weren't getting a response in French. The man was a total francophone, didn't understand what he's being told in English, so the rescue effort was not useful. So my question for you is, do we mention it in the study, or do we amend the motion to make sure it's in? So we can talk about the speed of response and whether or not it's equivalent in both official languages. But again, this is an open discussion. I want your opinion on this.
For me, my opinion would be that would be something that would come up in as the Coast Guard would be called as a witness, I would think, to come before committee. That would be a question to pass to the Coast Guard as to why they don't have the capabilities, which is part of the actual motion, rescue capabilities. People not being able to understand somebody who's calling in French and responding in English, that definitely would be a problem for somebody who is not totally bilingual. So I would think that would come out in the actual study itself, according to the way it is, and it should be covered off probably in the motion. So if you want to make it as an amendment, you can, to make sure that particular thing is included. I don't know if the Canadian Coast Guard and search and rescue capabilities and response times or rates would cover that off for you or not. So if you want to make that in the form of an amendment to make sure it's in there, you're more than welcome to do that.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to hear Mr. Cormier as well. I don't want to step on your toes here, but before making this kind of amendment, I would like to hear Mr. Cormier's opinion, but I would let you ask him to intervene. You know, I truly understand what Madame Desbiens is trying to say, and I think that Mr. Perkins' motion for a study is excellent. We have so much to do on the safety front, but, you know, Madame Desbiens, myself, and my English colleagues would like to make sure that the study includes the example. You know, if I'm out to sea and I call the Coast Guard and I say I'm drowning.
The line is, you know, understanding what I'm saying. So I think what Ms. Desbiens is saying here is want to make sure that, you know, both official language are also part of the search and rescue, like, you know, calls that Coast Guard received, and that there's a capability or the capacity here to respond in both official language. So I'm not sure, Mr. Perkins and Ms. Desbiens, I think maybe you want to discuss that. You want to put that in as an amendment and there's no harm to it. It's just respecting both official language and making sure that we have, person capable of, answering some distress call that are very important in the language that the people are, are giving those calls. So, je pense que Madame Desbiens, ça répond.
I think, Madame Desbiens, this is response to your concern. We want to make sure that our response capabilities exist in both official languages. I think that Mr. Perkins will agree with this type of amendment if you proposed it.
Yes, I would agree, just as long as it doesn't narrow the way the wording is. So I'm not quite sure how to do it, or the other way to do it, I think, Mr. Chair, as you said, is in terms of, I think, our agreement here in the committee that when we start to work on the witness list and all of those things, we all will agree that that will be part of the study and the witnesses that we call to make it part of it, just to simplify it. Either way, I'm fine.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes, on this point is a valid one that was made, but isn't that the place to question that would be under the Coast Guard's capabilities? It's included in the main motion. That would be a very real capability issue that will come out in the study when we go through it. There's an ample time to question that there. Are they able? Do they have the capacity and capability to respond in both official languages? Because as my colleague Mr. Cormier made and Madame Desbiens, yes, if you're a unilingual francophone and you're in real distress, you're in an animated environment anyhow and agitated, and it's important that somebody in the Coast Guard fleets, my understanding, there's always somebody that has that capability, but amending it, the committee will do as it choose, but amending it, I don't know how you would add more to the definition of capability. That would be a key capability item within the Canadian Coast Guard.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Madame Desbiens, does that answer your question?
Oui, ça répond.
Yes, it answers my questions, and it also gives me some insight on my decision to amend this motion. So I would still like to propose an amendment, and we'll see how the committee responds. We'll try and make this as efficient as possible. So it's very simple. I would like to add that we examine the search and rescue capabilities and response rates, and that we do so by keeping in mind both official languages. I just want to make sure that we take it into consideration during the study.
Could you repeat it once more so as everybody fully understands, whether they hear it in French or English, exactly what you're proposing?
With pleasure, Mr. Chair. So my amendment would be in the fourth, 1 to 3rd paragraph of the motion, examining the Canadian Coast Guard's search and rescue capabilities and response rates, and doing so by analyzing both official languages.
Thank you. I think we've all heard the amendment. Mr. Morrissey?
Well, Mr. Chair, I need clarification because now her verbiage is and study both official languages. This is not an official language study. It's a capability study of the Canadian Coast Guard, and we have to stay within that context. The wording, Madame, is your verbiage is now clear, and to study both official languages. Could you explain where we're going?
Mr. Bien?
Non, je comprends.
I understand what you're saying, what my colleague is saying. Maybe it's a question of punctuation here. So we're talking about the intervention rate, response rate, search and rescue capabilities, and that this exercise be done while analyzing the capacity in both official languages. So we're analyzing the services, not the official languages. So maybe we can play with the punctuation to get there. I didn't say where the commas go when I read the motion, but oftentimes punctuation can clarify the wording.
Je peux reprendre, là, examiner les capacités de...
Review search and rescue capacities and response rates by the Canadian Coast Guard. And doing that in both official languages. Could you just give me a second, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair?
We'll suspend for a minute so you can get your thoughts together, and we'll come right back. Time, Madame Desbiens.
Alors, on va y arriver, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, let's stay positive, Mr. Chair. Okay. I'd like to introduce an amendment, third paragraph of the motion. Okay.
Can withdraw your amendment, ask for permission to withdraw your original amendment and introduce a new one?
Donc,
is that what you want to do?
Oui.
Okay.
If I withdraw my amendment, I'll lose the opportunity to introduce something else. Can I introduce something else? No. Okay, so I withdraw my amendment and I'd like to introduce a new one.
Allow you to withdraw your amendment and introduce a new one. I see all thumbs up. So back to you, Madame Debian. Okay.
C'est bon?
Okay, oui.
Alors,
So I'd like to propose an amendment that can be annexed to the third paragraph of the motion. Review the search and rescue capabilities and response rates by the Canadian Coast Guard by analyzing their ability to provide this service in both official languages.
Amendment. Mr. Hardy, you have your hand up.
I do, Mr. Chair. The amendment as just proposed would focus then that whole examination on service in both official languages. But I believe the examination was meant to be much, much broader than that. I would instead, I'm wondering, I have alternate wording. I'm doing some wordsmithing here. I don't know if it's appropriate that I introduce that now and suggest it perhaps as a friendly amendment to Ms. Desbian.
No, it can't be. It's got to be a sub-amendment, or you have to talk to the amendment as proposed.
Okay, well, the amendment as proposed, as I say, could be taken as limiting the examination only to the language issue, but it's certainly meant to be much more than that.
Okay. So are you actually proposing a sub-amendment?
I am, yes. That the sub-amendment, well, you can decide for me if it's appropriate as a sub-amendment. I would have that paragraph read as follows: examining the Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue capabilities, including service in both official languages and response rates, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so your sub-amendment is adding that.
Well,
including.
It would not include what Ms. Debian was proposing. Instead, it would change the amendment to read as I indicated.
Okay, now we're speaking to the sub-amendment. Mr. Perkins.
I was going to propose some clarification language too. I wonder if I could just, without formally proposing it and speaking to Mr. Hardy's amendment, suggest that I think what we're trying to get at here is that it's about search and rescue capabilities. That's the original part. Also response times and the ability of the Coast Guard to respond to the mariner in the official language of their choice. I think that's what we're trying to get at, as opposed to, I think that's where we're getting hung up, is on this issue of studying the official languages capability overall of either the Act or the Coast Guard. And it's really about, if I understood Ms. Desbien's original thing, was the ability to respond in the language that the mariner wants to communicate in. If I have that wrong.
No, I think you have it right. And I see Madame Debian is shaking her head as right as well. But right now we have a sub-amendment from Mr. Hardy, unless Mr. Hardy wants to withdraw that, and then Madame Debian withdraw her motion as made and include it as you've said, Mr. Perkins. I don't know, but right now we have to deal with Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment.
I'm neither here nor there on it. I believe that the amendment that I proposed just simply, well, it simplifies everything. It includes the notion that the capabilities must include service in both official languages. But that was the intent of the sub-amendment. But if people want to give me a thumbs down on that, I'll withdraw it. How's that?
Okay, I know Mr. Cormier has his hand up to speak to the sub-amendment.
Et peut-être juste
Ms. Desbiens, just to reassure you, I think that Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment is covering what we seek to cover. As a Francophone, I want to make sure that there are services in both official languages, and I think that Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment does what we does is consistent with the intention that services provided by the Canadian Coast Guard are provided in 2 official languages. I think that it does what you were saying. I think Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment encompasses everything.
Mr. Morrissey, you got your hand up. Is that to talk to the sub-amendment?
Yes, and I agree with Mr. Cormier. Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment addresses the issue that Mr. Perkins raised, as well as dealing with the issue that Madame Debin is raising as well. But as clearly it says, it does not stray into other areas. It's simply a referencing. It makes it clear that in looking at this, the study would also examine the Coast Guard's capability to respond to the mariner in both languages. We don't need to be any more. We do not need to be any more complex than Mr. Hardy's sub-amendment addresses.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other discussion on the sub-amendment. So can we vote on the sub-amendment?
Okay,
Do we need a thumbs up?
Ouais.
Serge, your mic is on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm seeing thumbs up. Any dissension? Okay, so the sub-amendment as presented by Mr. Hardy is accepted. So now we're discussing the amended motion as sub-amended. So I'm seeing thumbs up all the way around. Any dissension? None. Motion carried on division. Or that's what we just voted on.
Mr. Chair, the clerk is trying to get your attention, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to get off of mute.
Okay.
Tina.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the committee has adopted the sub-amendment of Mr. Hardy, and then we procedurally we move to the amendment of Madame Desbiens, and so at this time we're missing the vote on the motion as amended.
Okay, I thought we voted twice. My mistake. Okay, I'll ask for Mr. Morrissey. You got hands up.
Yeah, well, I think now it has to be read back the motion as amended that we would now be voting on. I'm not clear. So if the clerk could read back what we are actually voting on this time, please.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to read the motion in its entirety or the paragraph that's being amended?
The paragraph that's being amended would be fine, I think, for everyone.
Third paragraph in the motion of Mr. Perkins, examining the Canadian Coast Guard's search and rescue capabilities, including service of both officials. Examining the Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue capabilities, including service in both official languages and response rates. And then it continues with the rest of the motion.
Okay, so what happens to the amendment by Madame Desbiens that she added at the end? We didn't remove that. We just added an amendment from Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Chair, I believe my sub-amendment, I indicated that would remove Madame Desbiens' wording and substitute what I had suggested. That passed, so the paragraph in question now has been amended, and that's been approved or accepted by the committee. So I believe now we're on to the main amendment or the main motion.
Yes, and that's okay. That's where we'll go with it, if everyone is in favor and if that's the proper thing to do, Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The main motion as amended. Mr. Cormier.
Okay.
Donc, sur la motion originale.
So on Mr. Perkins' initial motion.
La motion telle que modifiée.
The motion as amended.
Merci. Mr. McLeod. I'm sorry, Mr. McLeod, was that a thumbs up? Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes. Oui.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Oui.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
In favor.
Madame Desbiens?
En faveur.
Ms. Barron?
Yes. Oui.
Thank you. 11 yeas.
Thank you. Motion as amended, sub-amendment, or whatever you want to call it, pass unanimously. Mr. Kellaway, you have your hand up. And you're on mute.
You'd think after almost 3 years, I'd get used to doing this, right? Taking the mute off, putting the mute on. I'm just looking to make a motion with respect to a study, if that's possible to do that now.
All right, you'll have to make it quick. We're supposed to have the last half hour for scheduling.
Okay, very well. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study to examine the impact of climate change on our oceans and the role oceans can play in carbon sequestering. That the committee meet for no less than 6 meetings in relation to the study, that each party send a list of witnesses by priority, including the contact information to the clerk of the committee, that the committee report its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive study.
And Mr. Kellaway, has this been sent to the clerk and in both official languages and distributed?
I believe that's happening right now, yes, or should be.
Okay, we'll give a moment for that to.
Thank you.
Mr. Kellaway? Thank you. I'll just ensure that it's sent to FOPO. I don't see anything yet. I'm monitoring.
Okay. Yeah, my understanding it has been sent, but I will check right now again.
Mr. Chair, if I may, while we're waiting for this to come through.
Yes, Mr. Arnold.
I would also like to have time to present a motion before the close of the meeting today as well.
Okay, we can continue on with making motions. When 2:30 comes, if we haven't got the schedule done, we're going to have to do it at the first meeting when we get back. So
Thank you.
1 o'clock Eastern time. I'm sorry, I'm using Newfoundland time.
Well, that speaks to the procedural motion I wanted to make, which is if that were to happen, that I suggest we actually have a meeting next Tuesday, a regularly scheduled time. And perhaps we can have a vote on that before we adjourn, just to make sure.
Yeah, if I get time to get to you, Mr. Perkins, I will. Tina, any receipt of that yet?
Thumbs up.
Okay, and it's been distributed to the members? Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know if I can take 10 seconds just to speak to it, but if we're pressed for time, I'll take your lead on that.
Could I get the, I'm sorry, Mr. Kellaway, do you have the French to provide to me as well?
Everything has been sent. Yeah. So we'll double check once again. It's incoming. I could do a countdown. It's just the English for now, I've been told.
Is French coming anytime soon?
Just 1 second. Would it be possible to just take a 1 minute pause on this, Mr. Chair? No more than 60 seconds?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Our time is pretty tight today, so I don't know if this can wait, or maybe Mr. Arnold's motion can go ahead or something. I know time is very precious right now.
Well, actually, it's my understanding as it was read into the record by Mr. Kellaway, it was actually translated for everyone. So I don't know if we actually have to wait for the actual transcribed copy of it in French. I can confirm with
point of order. I mean, I've always been told we have to provide it in French to the clerk, both languages to the clerk. That's what I've been told. But I'm new, so.
Tina, could you clarify on that, please?
Mr. Chair, we are under committee business. Motions can be moved on the floor.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. That's a new one to have to be able to submit it only in English. That's a new one for me.
Well, it is just sent. So that would have been within the 60-second time frame I asked for, but it should be there now.
But to your comment, Mr. Simmer, as Tina, the clerk, reiterated, many times motions are made. We accept amendments without them being interpreted because they are read into the record and translated by the translators that are provided to the meeting and provided by the House.
But Mr. Chair, not a motion. Anyway, that said, so let's keep going.
Yes.
And I apologize for this. If Mr. Chair, if the clerk can identify if she's received it, it has been sent.
Mike, could I ask you to read the motion again slowly so as translation can actually translate it? And I know Tina's given a thumbs up.
Okay. Would you like me to read it, Chair?
Sure.
Okay. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study to examine the impact of climate change on our oceans and the role oceans can play in carbon sequestering. That the committee meet for no less than 6 meetings in relation to the study, that each party send a list of witnesses by priority, including their contact information to the clerk of the committee, and, that the committee report its findings to the House, and that, pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response.
Thank you. And before we go to a vote, I'd ask Mr. Cormier if he was able to hear that in time for translation to actually proceed to a vote. Or, okay, my right hand is telling me we have to open it up to debate. So before I actually call the question, Madame Desbiens.
Moi, j'étais un peu comme Monsieur Arnold. Je voulais m'assurer d'avoir un...
I was like Mr. Arnold. I hope to have time to move a fourth motion. It was not to participate in the debate that I raised my hand.
So no discussion on Mr. Kellaway's motion. Can I see either a thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, I'm seeing all thumbs up, passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kellaway, for your understanding for that. Now, next on the list, and I know, Mr. Arnold, you put up your hand, but we had, my assistant had Madame Desbiens down as the next person to speak first, and then we'll go to Mr. Arnold. Madame Desbiens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to give a little introduction before reading my motion, or should I read the motion first and make comments after? So I will read one was that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on a recreational fishing a permit in eastern Quebec, that the committee invite the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and Fishers, and the committee hold at least 5 meetings, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House. If everyone got that. I would like to say that it's very important in Quebec, and I know that it's also important in Maritimes. Recreational fisheries is part of the DNA of people who live in the Gaspésie, along the St. Lawrence, and in the Maritimes. It's a fisheries which is leisure and also is a way of feeding families. And in my writing, there was an issue with Kaplan last year. Everybody wanted to eat it, and the only one who was able to fish it, well, her fishery, her permit was for a period after the passage of the Kaplan. And I know that it's true also in your writings and in your regions. So it's a motion that is very important for me because it's a question of identity for people who live close to water in the Maritimes and close to the Saint Laurent in Quebec.
Can you want to speak to the motion?
Yes. In Atlantic Canada, British Columbia has a very robust recreational saltwater fishery. Atlantic Canada, many species do not have currently the ability to have recreational. So I would support this motion, but would like to add an amendment, if I could, to just add Atlantic Canada after Eastern Quebec to the motion.
Okay, we've heard the proposed amendment by Mr. Perkins. So any discussion on the proposed amendment? Mr. Small. You're not coming through, Woody.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to know if this motion is species specific. That's my question.
Madame Desbiens, oh no, Mr. Perkins?
No, that would obviously, I think, be part of the study, a discussion. So I don't want to limit it to a particular species by naming them. And the species may be a little different in different provinces and shorelines.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands up, can I ask for a vote on the amendment, please? Show of hands, or do you want to record the vote? I see thumbs up. Mr. Morrissey?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what you're asking me to vote on.
The amendment as proposed by Mr. Perkins.
Which was, and then there was Mr. Small spoke to it, so I'm confused.
Just to add Atlantic Canada after Eastern Quebec.
So that's the amendment you're asking.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Cormier. Or have you finished, Mr. Morrissey?
Well, it was just to have a clarification on some of what was Mr. Perkins was proposing as an amendment.
Yeah, just the wording of Atlantic Canada after the words Eastern Quebec. So, not seeing any other hands up for the proposed amendment. Can I see it as a thumbs up or thumbs down? If it's confusing, I'll ask for a recorded vote. 1, 2. Okay, I think we should do a recorded vote, because I see some thumbs up and a lot of nothings. So, Tina, please. And the proposed amendment by Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monsieur Cormier.
I will abstain on that one.
Mr. McLeod.
Abstain.
Mr. Hardy.
I'll abstain as well.
Mr. Callaway.
Abstain.
Mr. Morrissey.
Abstain.
Mr. Arnold.
In favor.
Mr. Perkins.
Favor.
Mr. Small.
In favor.
Mr. Zimmer.
Favor.
Madame Desbiens.
En faveur.
And Ms. Barron.
In favor.
Thank you. Yeas 6.
Okay, so the amendment is carried. We'll move on now if there's any debate on the main motion as amended. I'm not seeing any hands up. So Tina, could we go to a vote on this as well, please? On the main motion as amended.
Mr. Cormier.
Abstain.
Mr. McLeod.
Abstain.
Mr. Hardy.
Abstain.
Mr. Callaway.
Abstain.
Mr. Morrissey.
Abstain.
Mr. Arnold.
In favor.
Mr. Perkins.
Or
Mr. Small.
Favor.
Mr. Zimmer.
In favor.
Madame Desbiens.
En faveur.
Ms. Barron.
In favor.
Yeas 6.
Thank you. The motion as amended is passed, carried. That one now on to Mr. Arnold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to introduce a further motion today. After discussion on our meeting on Tuesday, we've made substantive changes to the motion that was presented, and I would propose the following. That pursuant to Standing Order 108.2, the committee undertake a study of at least 6 meetings to examine how the Department of Fisheries and Oceans prioritizes resources and develops science studies and advice for the department and how the minister applies data and advice provided by the department and other government departments to ministerial decisions, and that the committee call witnesses, including the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, senior department officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and persons who have directly contributed to the department's science and science process to testify, and that the committee hear from no fewer than 20 witnesses, that the committee report its conclusions and recommendations to the House. And I believe that's being transmitted to the clerk as I speak.
Okay, Tina, if you could let me know when you receive it, please. Thumbs up from Tina.
Just a point of order or clarification,
yes,
Mr. Chair. Yes. Is this the same motion that Mr. Arnold tabled last Tuesday? The same one? Is this?
No, this is substantially different. Previous motion asked how the minister applies scientific advice to ministerial decisions. This one asks how the minister applies data and advice provided by the department and other government departments. This one also specifies how many witnesses at a minimum that we hear from on this committee. We'd been asked for further definition or narrowing of the scope of that. For previous motion, we believe that has done this. Over the past 6 years, I can't think of a study undertaken by this committee that did not touch on the science or the need for science, and a need that I believe all parties recognize. In budget 2016, I didn't support everything in there, but I welcome the investment in DFO science because I know how important DFO science is, and it still is today, to the conservation and rebuilding of our major stocks, especially Pacific salmon. However, the past 6 years, that major investment in DFO science since 2016 hasn't delivered the results that fisheries need and the results that Canadians who depend on fisheries need. I draw the member's attention to the testimony we heard in the last Parliament, testimony that warned us, and I quote, "We can't manage what we don't measure. We're not monitoring enough and we're not measuring enough," end quote. This is the only testimony our committee received in the last Parliament that should have drawn our attention to DFO science. My understanding is that science is the ruler that the department and the government use to measure the state of stocks, measure the quality of habitats, and measure threats. We've been told adequate funding is in place. We are told that appropriate plans and strategies are in place. And despite this, we're not seeing the results we need in many of our fisheries. Rather, we're seeing the exact opposite, and stocks continue to decline. In the last Parliament, we also heard that the government's reinterpretation of spot prawn tubbing regulations did not have sound scientific basis, despite DFO and the minister's assertions that there was scientific basis and conservation reasons. It seems the government has now pulled back its reinterpretation, but damage has been done. Harvesters, retailers, and supply chains, all of which employ Canadians, were shaken. The confidence of Canadians in their federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans was also shaken. These are just two examples. I'm glad the member for Egmont pressed for clarity in the motion at the last meeting, because I do want all members to be clear on what this motion seeks to achieve and why it's of value to this committee and the work that we aspire to do and provide to Canadians. In the coming Parliament, I assure you that every single study we undertake together as a committee will touch on the science and DFO science. And I see great value in undertaking this study early in this Parliament to inform our understandings of the DFO science and the science process in the department meant to inform the minister's decision. We all want sound decisions based on sound science, and we all want to support the scientific process, supporting the minister whose decisions have significant effects on fisheries, oceans and Canadians that depend on them. Well, I have more to say but I'll allow some comments at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. I see some hands up. Mr. Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I would like for Mr. Arnold to go back to explain the difference on the key phrasing that he altered, and why I'm saying that. I want to be in a position to see if I can support where he's going, because his comments were very, very valid. I can recall one of the most dramatic decisions that was ever made by a fishery minister was, and I'll say it, made by my good friend, the late John Crosbie, a conservative, but somebody I'd grown to know and have great respect for, and we worked well. But if I look at that, and he discussed it with me personally when he went back to Newfoundland to deliver the terrible, terrible news of closing that key fishery. But the science was telling politicians and ministers for years and years that there was something terrible happening. But the political arm kept pushing in a different direction, and where we go. So we do have to have extremely strong science, and that's why our government made a fundamental and strong commitment to strengthening the parts of the department that had been so reduced over years, because science and data go hand in hand. And often you will have the first body that gets attacked when a primary producer is affected, and I'm seeing this now in PEI in the potato industry, is to attack the regulating body within government. The next in line is the politician. We've seen it and over the years, so it's extremely important. I do like the context. I think we may need some opportunity to absorb the full context of your motion, Mr. Arnold, and your comments. I suspect, well, I for one could probably find some common ground, but where are we going, and what is the part that we want to really get at in this study? Because it could be one of the most fundamental. We've had several since I've been on this committee. One of the ones that drew a lot of passion and a lot of discussion was the one on the moderate livelihood, but it was a very, very good study. And I think this is where some of it came from. If you look at the porosity issues we dealt on the West Coast, there's a constant tug of war between whose science should we respect, who is independent. We've had in the past studies independent scientists and experts from outside of DFO appear before the committee and speak, and often it's in conflict. And so then the fisher is left to question which direction they're going. So I'm still, I still feel, and you may want to speak to it, is while you did some word changing in the motion, I think we're still at the same part. I would like to see a really clear focus, so maybe we could spend some time on looking at the language and where we would want to go with the study, and I would want to see that and reserve opinion on where I would vote on it. But that's my perspective, Mr. Arnold, and you're right. There is examples in the past where the political leadership did not respond to the science and the data very good one. And the primary producer at the end of the day paid the consequences. So yes, and I can relate to a number of situations.
Mr. Morrissey.
Sorry?
Mr. Morrissey, I have to interrupt you. Our time is up for today. We've reached 2:30 Newfoundland time, which allows for our 2 hours of committee meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.